Hi, I'm Christine McDonald from Rushing River Apiaries, and today I'm going to walk you through how to set up an electric fence around your bee yard. I'll start by saying that I found this to be a really daunting thing at the beginning because it was so foreign to me. Now I love setting them up. I realize how simple it is if you just take the time to sit down and piece together exactly what you're going to need. The actual rigging up of the Energizer is the easiest part. Now, there are some choices when it comes to an Energizer. You'll notice that ours has a solar panel on the top of it, and then this unit is quite large because it has a battery in there. So this is like kind of an all-in-one unit. This is the more expensive way to go. If you're able to run electricity through an extension cord out to your bee yard, you're going to be able to use a much smaller and much cheaper unit that runs on electricity. It doesn't need the solar panel, it doesn't need the battery. You can also piece something together. You can get a smaller Energizer that runs on electricity, and you can rig it up with an RV battery and an RV solar panel. We're looking at doing a few of those this summer for our more permanent yards, and then using these all-in-ones for our temporary yards when we put our bees out to the fireweed each summer. Now you can see here as you look along the length of one side of our bee yard that we use two different types of posts. We have these wood corner posts at each corner and then halfway along each kind of span. This yard is about 80 feet by 80 feet, which is quite long. So we have three posts in the middle, and the very center one is a sturdy wood post. In between those, just as kind of a wire guide, is a piece of rebar. And all of those have the wire running through it. And I'll show you the hardware that is used to keep that wire insulated from the posts, but holding it in place. We have these posts about 20 feet apart. We do things very roughly. Okay, we're not big on precise measurements. These corners might not be exactly square, but it works. When you decide to build your electric fence, the first thing you're going to want to decide is what kind of posts you're going to use, because that's going to inform what kind of hardware you need to hold that wire on. So on our wood posts, anywhere where the wire is running straight through, we just have a little single runner. You can see how the wire hooks in kind of down into one notch and up into the other to hold it steady, even if there's a little bit of play on the wire like this. Now, if you're using rebar, there are special little insulators that actually fit right onto the rebar. So there's a dial here that can loosen it off to move it up and down on your piece of rebar. And then it has a very similar little attachment here where it goes up over one, down over the other. So again, there's no play in that wire along the rebar. You can now buy completely insulated posts. They are plastic, and then on the bottom they have two little metal prongs to dig them into the ground. We've used those on our newest yard, and so far we're quite happy with them. They're inexpensive, and they have the attachments for the wire built right in. You'll also notice that this is not silver wire. This is like a rope with copper kind of run through it, so it's an energized rope. We find this much easier if there's any chance that you're going to have to rebuild your yard or move your yard. This is easily reusable. Straight up aluminum wire is not easily reusable. On that note, when you're building your yard, build the yard that you're going to need 5 years from now. Not necessarily the yard that you need today. We've rebuilt a few yards because we weren't looking far enough ahead at what our needs were going to be down the road. Now, the hardware that you see here is good both to use at your gate, which is where this one is, and also on your corner posts, because you can use one sticking out kind of diagonally off the corner and run both wires to it, keeping the entire wire away from your wood posts. I'm going to show you our gate setup here as well. This unit is like a ratchet for tightening up the wire. It's much more important with aluminum wire. With this nice rope stuff, you can almost pull it tight enough by hand that these are not as necessary. I'll also show you right here our insulated gate handles. So this is tied to one end of the wire, and then it hooks on here to close the gate. It's insulated, so you could open this without turning off your Energizer, although our habit is to turn off the Energizer anytime we arrive at a yard anyway. There are other ways of making a gate that involve a little bit less hardware. At one of our yards, and I'll share a picture of it in the blog post, we actually have just 2 posts side by side, so the wires running from each side to those 2 posts. And then, just like a lot of livestock gates on farms, we just keep those together with wire at the top and bottom. So that's another option that involves a little bit less hardware than all of this rigging here. So this is the other style of gate that I mentioned. With this one, the wire is not connected all the way around in a circle. It starts and ends. But with this gate, the white rod is really easily movable. It's just stuck into the ground with a couple of prongs, and you can see that it's held onto the wood post with a wire at the top. So when I want to open this gate, I turn off the Energizer, and then I just remove that wire in the top, and I pick up the whole thing and walk it out and stick it in the ground, you know, kind of in the other direction so that the gate is open. Now, as far as setting up your wires and how much stuff you're going to need, we run 5 wires around each of our electric fences. So you can see that there are 5 here. They're about a foot apart, but the bottom one starts less than a foot off the ground. We like to go about 8 inches. It's very important that the ground is cleared underneath this. So if your bee yard is in a location where you're able to get out and mow the grass, or where there's not anything fast growing, then inch that down as close to the ground as you can. Give it a little more room if you know that you're not going to get to lawn mowing as often as you should. But you do need to keep it clear of debris so that it's not grounding out. That's going to cause it to lose its energy. So when we set up our Energizer, there's a positive, which is the red, and a negative side to the battery. We run the positive to wires 1, 3, and 5, starting at the top. So there's going to be 3 of those. Off the negative, we run it to wires 2 and 4. So the 2 that are kind of in the middle. And then down to the grounding post. And I'll show you that here quickly. Here is our grounding post. There's my shadow. So it's a heavy metal rod that is sunk about 3 feet in the ground. And the energy runs down out to it off this negative post. This is insulated wire. It can be insulated aluminum, is a little bit cheaper. It can be insulated copper because that's sometimes all you can find locally. But these wires should be insulated just because there's so much happening right here that you don't want any crossing wires to be creating spark. I'll bring you in again here to show you the hardware that attaches these wires. So you can see all I've done is taken off the rubber on each side, and then both wires, so this is off the red and then another one heading down to the next wire, both of them go through this same little nut. These only need to be hand tightened, so it's actually nice to be able to run them back and forth along your fence as you are rigging it up. So that's another little bit of hardware that you will need. Here they attach right on to the Energizer. There's nothing extra needed there. Now, if you are using an Energizer that has the built-in solar panel, or if you're running an RV solar panel, you're going to want to point that south, or as south as you can. We find that elevated makes a good difference for us versus being on the ground, especially if there are trees around that are kind of tightening up your horizon. We also find, being in the rainy Northwest, that on our shoulder seasons, early spring and late fall, sometimes this is not working. Our daylight hours are too short. There might be cloud cover for days on end, and occasionally we lose power from our solar panel. Conveniently, it's also the time when the bears are kind of not around, so far it hasn't posed any problems, touch wood. So there we go. In the blog post that accompanies this, I'm going to include a few more options for hardware that you can use other than what I've shown at this yard. We have slightly different things at each of our yards just because we've built them in different years and we've purchased whatever was available. So as long as you are insulating each of your posts, there are lots of ways that you can set that part up. And then I'll also share a little kind of cheat sheet for calculating how many of each thing you're going to need as you start to set up your electric fence. Thanks for watching.